Hey everyone, Mr. Say here. This is a guide for round 6 of the Nations Cup Exhibition Season 2. Let's get this started. For the time trial in the Toyota Supra, you have to do this weird thing of holding the throttle down to around 80 to 85%, since for some reason you can get a faster lap by holding the throttle down that much compared to being at full throttle the entire time. It is possible to do this with the controller, but for me it's a little easier to do it on the wheel and pedals. So you're going to want to hold it down to that amount of throttle the entire time. So as we approach the 4,000 meter mark, that is when you want to start to question why the heck you're even doing this to begin with. As we approach the 5,000 meter mark, that is when you want to bring your hands up and pretend that you are on a really cool roller coaster ride. We'll quickly fast forward through this, and as you pass the 9,000 meter mark, that is when you want to check your power levels. Now for the bank turns in the Toyota Supra, for the time trial, you can bring yourself near the top of the bank turn. You can cut a little bit here, and then just slowly bring yourself towards the top. And you just want to try to hold your position for as long as you can, using as little steering as possible, still holding the throttle down to around 80 to 85%. And it's going to be a little hard to do, but luckily it looks like we won't have to do this during the actual race itself. Just be nice and careful as you exit the turn if you're still towards the top of the bank turn, as the guardrails can come a little too close to you and you want to make sure that you don't hit it. So let's go ahead and go into hyperspeed mode, since all we're doing is just going straight and just keeping the throttle at around 80 to 85% pressed down. So now that we're approaching the final bank turn, you want to approach it the same way that you did for the first bank turn, where you cut a little bit of the bank turn and then just slowly bring yourself up towards the top. And just be nice and careful here, especially towards the end of the bank turn, as you don't want to hit the guardrails and end up slowing yourself down. And we'll fast forward through this one more time. Just be nice and careful here on the edge of the bank turn, and you are pretty much good to go. So that is all for the lap guide. Let's go ahead and talk about the strategies. So when it comes to the qualifying strategy, let's be honest here, it's not really going to matter since it's all going to be a big lottery. This is basically the race before the race. And to show you what I mean, I'm going to go ahead and pull up a couple clips from the Nations Cup race that we did at Route X a couple months ago. And hopefully you are luckier than I am, because I was at the very back of the pit lane and the game decided to have me come out last. So I basically had no qualifying buddy for a while, but there was a kind soul named Exhib that decided to wait for me. But let's say all goes well and you come out with the pack, you're all basically going to once again be doing the race before the race. You're all going to be bump drafting each other until you get a lap time in. So for this upcoming Nations Cup race, you'll have 8 minutes to try to get a good time in. Once again, this qualifying session is not really going to matter because it's all one big lottery. And you're only going to have one chance to try to get a lap time in, so make sure you try to get a good lap time in. I mean, it's not really going to matter, I guess, but assuming that bump drafting is allowed, you're basically going to be doing this. And well, yeah, so you're going to be taking advantage of the slipstream, bump draft those in front of you, and that's kind of it. It's pretty much the same format from last race that will apply to this race. The only question we don't know is if bump drafting will be allowed. And if it is allowed, then you're basically going to be doing this until the qualifying session ends. And try to be careful as you go through the bank turns, because you don't want to end up hitting someone that could end up making the big one happen. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the qualifying session. Just try to make sure you can get the slipstream off of someone, bump draft if it's allowed. Shoot, here we go again. So we are doing 2 laps at Special Stage Route X. This is going to be a giant meme race. So fuel and tires are at time 0, so you obviously don't have to worry about that. This is going to be more about trying to stay in the slipstream, bump drafting if it's allowed, and basically trying to survive this race. So there are quite a couple N700 cars that are allowed for this race, one of them being the Toyota Supra, the Nissan 300ZX, the 2006 Ford GT, and a couple other cars. Also, I just want to note that there is at least one person in this lobby that is not using the right tune, so if you see them fly by, they're the ones using the wrong tune. But anyways, slipstream. It's going to be very important. It's going to let you keep up with those around you. And if bump drifting is allowed, take advantage of that because that's going to help everyone go even faster. If you recall the Nations Cup race a couple months ago that was here at Special Stage Route X, you might remember that the slipstream range, it was a little bit long. I think it was more than 1.5 seconds. But this time the slipstream is set to real, which means that your slipstream range is 3/4 of a second. So you want to make sure that you are within the 3/4 of a second range so you can be within the slipstream. The moment that you are more than 3/4 of a second behind the car in front of you, you've lost your slipstream, and if they're in a pack of cars, then you're going to get left behind and your race is essentially over. So you want to try to make sure that you get a good start at the very start of the race and get under the slipstream right away. So once you guys get all close and cuddly with each other, you can start to bump draft each other if it's allowed. If it's allowed, just go ahead and do that and just wait until the bank turns come around. And once you guys reach the bank turns, that is where you want to be extra careful. So whip on the radar by pressing left or right on the D-pad for the controllers, plus or minus buttons on the Logitech wheels, and you'll see on the bottom right hand corner of the screen is a thing called radar. So this lets you see who is right around you, more specifically who is right behind you. So for example, you see that there are two cars or there's one car behind me on my blind side. So I probably shouldn't make a move to the right, because if I make a move to the right, then I might end up hitting the car behind me, and that could cause the big one. And when there's 20 angry cars racing around in close proximity to each other, the radar is going to come extra handy, and hopefully you can avoid something like this happening. So the real race ends up happening towards the very end of the race. So once you approach the last bank turn, that is where you need to start to position yourself to try to slingshot yourself past those around you and try to get to the finish line first. And yeah, you just need to position yourself just right. So for example, as you see in the clip here, I was able to position myself just right to be able to slingshot myself past these two cars. And this was a bit of a close one because I was barely able to get past the purple car on my left, and then the car behind me was able to take advantage of my slipstream and almost got the pass done, but luckily I was able to sneak away with that win. First car is disqualified because they were using a different tune. But anyways, so the Supra is going to be the best car to use as it is able to hold the highest speed and still has enough revs to be able to get more speed through the use of slipstream and bump drafting. The other cars, so for example the Enzo Ferrari, the F40, and those cars, they do alright, but they have a couple flaws, some of them being that they are too slow to accelerate, some of them are a little too slow, period. And then there are two cars that have other issues, two of them being the Corvette C7 and the Ford GT. And these two cars, their revs are already pretty high when they reach 253 miles per hour. So you can imagine that with the slipstream, they're going to be redlining. So for example, right here, I'm very close to redlining. Actually was redlining going down the hill, and that is not a good thing. And yeah, you risk hitting the rev limiter, and if you do end up hitting the rev limiter, then well, you can't go any faster, so that's going to make you a sitting duck. So the Toyota Supra is the go-to car, and you can use the other cars at your own risk, but there are two cars that you don't want to use, and those two cars are the Ford GT and the Corvette C7, mainly because they do risk getting onto the red line and therefore risk getting into the rev limiter. So there you go, that is pretty much it for this guide on Special Stage Route X. I don't know why I made this guide to begin with, but for those who need a guide, then you have one, and hopefully you watch it until the very end. But anyways, that is all from me. I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. So this is Mr. MCA questioning his own life decisions, and I'll see you in the next video.